Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, back in the Wildwind Workshop for some more live, maybe, Q&A, where I'm going to be tackling your most pressing catamaran sailing questions. Very exciting as usual. Yeah, I'm coming to you from Wildwind Sailing Holidays on the Greek island of Lefkos. And if you are watching this, if you could do us a favour and vote for Wildwind in the British Holiday Awards. There was a video about 2 weeks ago that I put out. Just check that one out. I'll put a link after I've finished taping this in the description below as well. But that would be marvellous because we are hoping to win. If we win, we should be able to get some more boats. So there we go. There's a good reason for sticking your vote in, even if you've never been here. Thank you very much. So it has absolutely been going on, or perhaps you could say going off, here at Wildwind this week. We've had so much good champagne conditions, a lot of wind and special events going on. So this was the very famous Ionian Regatta week where we went off and sailed about I think it was about 25 nautical miles, which is, I think, something like 35 kilometers course out of our normal sailing area, around an island and then back. And yes, the wind really turned on the heat for that event. And I have to perhaps mention at this point that, yes, I might have set a new course record sailing on Bad Boy 94. Very, very good quality sailing. So that was very nice. Okay, just saying hello to everyone who's checking in. If you're checking in, say hello, say where you are. We've got Bob on board, who's in Canada in the morning. Yeah, I hope you're well. Yeah, very good. Thanks, Bob. It's been a great week here. We've got Ryan in Maui, and he's up early. Well, he's going to have to be to catch this live. Sailing the NACRA 500, of course, Honeycat. We've got Laurie on board in the UK. Okay, in the UK. All right, so as usual, got some preloaded questions that have either been put in the comments from last week's Q&A or in any other videos. So if you're not able to watch this live, I can still tackle your pressing questions, but it will just be in next week's session. We've got Ben on board as well, Mark and Janet in Ohio, Aver and Eric in Sweden. And I think the first preloaded question, we are heading to Sweden. This one comes from Declan, who wants to know what we feel about storing your sails during the season. So this isn't for the winter. This is when you're intending on using the boat, perhaps at weekends. He says, should one leave the battens in? Yeah, so first question on sail storage. What do you do with your battens? Do you just leave them in, tied in? Do you leave them in but untied? Or do you take them out completely? Okay, so the standard thing that you should be doing here, especially if you've got racing sails. If you're not racing and you're just sailing recreationally and not so worried about the performance, and perhaps your sails are quite old already, then it's not so necessary. But if you're racing with your boat, and definitely if you've got sails which are made of a high-tech material, like a sort of mylar kind of material, so then what you should certainly be doing is loosening, untying the top 3 battens, and depending on what the angle of your battens is like. So on some sails, these are the battens, they're all going to line up quite nicely. But if on your sail, as you get towards the top, you get a load of angle like that, you should definitely take out the battens which don't line up with the rest, so that when you roll the sail up, you're not kind of twisting those battens. Because what will happen if you just roll the sail up like that is those top battens over time will get a bit of a twist to them. So your airflow at the top of the sail won't be as good as it possibly could be. So untie the top 2 or 3 battens and take them out of the sail. And what is quite common practice is to untie them. And then if your batten pockets are big enough and your battens aren't too big, just poke them into the batten pockets with the next one, but making sure there is a bit sticking out the end so it's not a pain to get them out afterwards. So that would be the most common practice, what people do with racing sails, especially if they're made of some sort of laminate material. If you really want to look after your sails, untie all of the battens every time, but it is of course going to make your preparation time a lot longer, which is why most people don't do that every time. If you're leaving your sails for the whole winter, then you certainly should be untying all the battens, and I'd suggest you do that regardless of what boat you're sailing, what type of sails you've got, whether you're racing or not. When you put your sails to bed for the winter, untie all of the battens. And again, if you've got this sort of twisting going on, then just take the battens which are at an angle out. But then next part of Declan's question is, would you flake the sails or just roll them? So flaking the sails is what we call when we lie the sail kind of like this. So with the sort of sails that we're using with the full battens, there's no need to flake them. Rolling the sails is going to end up giving us a much better end result, because with the flaking, especially with these laminate materials, we might end up with creases on those edges. So what we don't want is the creases. So just roll the sail. If you really want to cook the goose, then what you could do is get a piece of tube, like the sort of tube used in plumbing. So you have your tube in the middle like this, and actually roll the sail around the tube, which is going to give you a much looser roll, and it's going to protect the sail much more while you're not using it for an extended period. So there you go. Hope that helps there, Declan, and anybody else who would like to know what I think about storing your sails. The other part of sail storage is you want to wash them if they've been immersed in salt water. So if you're sailing on the sea and you capsize, you definitely want to wash and dry the sails before putting them away. Of course, when you finish sailing, it's not always possible to dry the sails. So, which is why here, what we do is wash the sails when we put them up every day to reduce the accumulation of salt on the sails, which over time, it really does make a difference. So there we go. All right, we got Damien on board in the Galapagos Islands. Nice to know that we're hitting the corners of the planet. We've got David in Michigan, Hobie 16 sailor. We've got Sigitas in Lithuania. Nice. Thanks for tuning in. Great to have you with us. Hopefully the internet will stay with us for the whole duration today. If you didn't know, last week the internet did cut out, but I taped the whole of the Q&A as well on a camera. So then I uploaded it afterwards. So if it does cut out, which has been known, then if you give it a few hours afterwards, then I'll have the session uploaded so you can watch at least the rest of the questions which are in the comments and the rest of the questions which are in the preloaded selection also. So Zach is on board. Good morning. In Michigan on Thunder Bay, Lake Huron. Just getting ready to rig up the Hobie 18. Nice. Yeah, I hope you have some good wind. We've got Royal in Denmark. Hello. Great to have you with us. Laurie's with us as well, who says, just wondering if you have ever snapped a Hobie rudder. Ha, ha, ha. Well, there we go. There's a question. My helm and I recently managed to snap one without any impact. Yeah, all of the Hobie rudder blades, apart from the EPO rudder blades, have been known to snap. And yes, they will snap without actually having an impact. So yes, and I have snapped probably more than my fair share of rudder blades over the years. All right, so because we're in the workshop, I'm going to grab one. Okay, this is actually a rudder blade off a Hobie Tiger. Oh, it's not looking too sharp. And what happens, in fact, this rudder blade is effectively snapped. So when we've got a crack running deep through like this is pretty much, unfortunately, if you're going to be sailing in heavy winds, pushing the boat hard, once this sort of damage has happened, you could try to rebuild the rudder blade, get a boat builder to do a job on it. But if you take the boat out in strong winds and you push it, then once this has happened, the structural integrity of the blade is never really going to come back. So the reason why this happens with this construction of rudder blades, this is what was commonly known as the White Knight construction, is it's made from two halves of, as you can see here, and the two halves are glued together using what might be described as a not particularly good bonding agent. And when the two halves, what happens is when it's under load, the two halves can separate, and when they're not glued together effectively here, oh, you can see it move actually when I push there, it means that the rudder no longer has the kind of sideways integrity that it needs. So where the rudder stock ends, which would be about here, that part of the rudder blade is held very securely, but this part isn't. And when it's under load, it'll just bend and bend and bend. And if you feel that you've got weird steering, like what we might call lee helm, where you're having to push the rudders away all the time to keep the boat going straight, that can be because your rudder blade has separated and it's bending a lot. And if you continue sailing with that blade as it is, it will eventually snap. There we go. That's the sad truth of snappy rudder blades. Sorry to put that to you this early on, especially if it's the morning for you. You don't want to start your day like this, but sometimes the truth is necessary to be heard. Thank you. All right. So Eric says, any thoughts on the Paper Tiger catamaran? Unfortunately, I'm not really, when I say not really, not at all educated about the Paper Tiger catamaran. I believe they come from Australia, but that is all that I know. So sorry, I can't help you on that. But I'm sure if there's one for sale in your area, it would certainly be worth looking at if it ticks the boxes of what you need from a boat, such as is it good? What sort of weight can it carry? Are you going to be sailing single-handed or with a crew? Has it got a double trapeze on it if you are sailing with a crew? Not that having a double trapeze is essential. Take the Dart 18, for example, single trapeze, and it is one of the most popular catamarans and really does deliver the good stuff. So, yeah, just have a look, Google search, look at the specification and see if it's in good condition. If you're looking at buying a boat, always factor in what does it come with. If it comes with recently replaced rigging, That's a bonus. Does it come with a trailer, a beach trolley, a cover, stuff like that? Condition of the sails, the trampoline. There we go. All right. On the topic of the battens here, Bob says, when I was into windsurfing big time, always removed the battens and packed the sail away after drying it. Sails lasted a lot longer, albeit was in fresh water, not salt. All right. Thanks for that, Bob. Cole says, what do you think about 18-foot sailing? I think it looks very exciting, but I think on an 18-foot skiff, you really do have a lot on. And on a boat like this, much like the smaller kind of version, which you could call the 49er, it is massively about teamwork. So if you've got three people who are intending to sail together a lot, so what you need is 3 people who are going to invest time and probably money, unless you've got a sponsor, into looking after the boat, and time to practice and train, then I think the 18-foot skiff can really give you a fantastic time, because these boats are ridiculous. Just I would, if you've never seen them in action, just put into a YouTube search 18-foot skiff sailing, and I'm sure you will not be disappointed with what you see there. Yeah, very exciting stuff. All right, we've got Max on board in Rosenheim, Germany. Great to have you with us, Max, as always. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we've got Charles with a good question. What should my first boat be? Big fan, want to try it out. I live in Montana, USA, learning on lakes. Yeah, so one of the easiest choices of what your first boat should be is made by what is available in your area. What I wouldn't do as a first boat is buy something brand new, because you're going to pay a lot of money for a brand new boat for starters. And if you decide after a while that maybe you don't like that particular boat, you're going to lose a lot of value. So I would definitely be looking for a second-hand boat. And the most common second-hand boats that you can find, and this is why we talk about the Hobie 16 more than any other type of boat on Joyrider TV, is because there are more Hobie 16s in the world than all other catamarans put together. That's a lot of boats. So you're more likely to find a Hobie 16 at a good price than any other type of boat. Is it the perfect boat for a beginner? Not perfect, but if it's less expensive, you can spend a bit of money on replacing the rigging. This is what we always recommend when you're getting a used boat, unless the rigging's been replaced in the last couple of years. And then, because the 16 isn't as ideal a boat as the first boat, what it really means is you just need to be going out with a bit less wind to start with. There are other boats which are more ideal, which are a bit easier to use. Like in the US, I think the Getaway is a very user-friendly boat, but the likelihood of finding one for sale used is less likely. You could approach some sailing schools. A good plan would actually be to go to a sailing school, trying out if they've got some different types of boat, try some different types of boat and see what really talks to you. But there's a lot of choices out there, but I would say, under the banner of getting it done, get a boat, get out on the water, get a Hobie 16. Wow, I just said that. Thanks very much. We've got RJ Fleet hailing in from Lake Benton, Minnesota. Sometimes I have to launch with an offshore wind direction. Any tips? Oh, yes, indeed. So here we go. Launching with an offshore wind. So if this is the land, and unlike, or actually, we always have the wind blowing from the top. So let's stick with that. So there's the wind, but on this occasion, the sea is down here. So this is the land. So when the boat is pointing into the wind, it will be like this. Very nice. So the problem here, if you were to launch in a conventional manner, is if you wanted to sail away from the beach forwards, you'd have to walk the boat out to sea a reasonable distance, like to here. And then immediately when you get on, you would have to do this kind of maneuver, which is quite obviously quite a big angle to turn through. And if it's windy, there is a chance that you're not going to make this transition. So the best thing to do in an offshore wind is you don't even have to get your ankles wet. Have the rudders up, boat right next to the beach or the land, and then helm and crew just sit or stand on the bows of the boat. And then what that does, by going to the bows of the boat, is it makes the bows, the front of the boat, which is generally the long, narrow, knife-like section of the hull, it makes that section of the hull act like a rudder, which holds it very straight. And then because the wind is blowing onto your rig, you're then going to be able to just get blown out backwards. And then when you've gone backwards far enough that you feel that you have enough time and space to be able to make this maneuver, then go and jump on the boat, put the rudders down, and then because you're going backwards, when you put the rudders across like this, the boat is going to reverse round here, and then you'll be able to start sailing away forwards. That is by far the best way to leave in an offshore wind. Very nice, and it's quite nice to go. I really like going backwards, actually. I've just decided that this week. Done a lot of backwards sailing this week, and I like it. So there we go. That is what I would suggest for that sort of launch in that wind direction. All right. Hello, Toot. Great to have you on board. Toot has sold his Hobie 17 and he's bought a Nacra 5.7. Nice choice. Thanks for tuning in as always, Toot. Okay, we've got Samuel on board. Offshore launch. Any reason why you wouldn't just drop rudder and back the sail? Seems like you have much more control. Well, you could put the rudders down, but it depends on how deep the water is. If the water is really deep, then by all means put the rudders down and then you can steer backwards. But if the water's not so deep, what you don't want to risk is one of the worst things you can do for your rudders is hit the bottom going backwards, because the rudder obviously won't kick up when you're going backwards. So you're going to damage something if you do hit something going backwards with the rudders down. The other reason why having the rudders up to start with is good is because you will definitely go in a straight line and it doesn't require quite as much skill. When you're going backwards, rudders down, these bad boys are super sensitive. And if you're not keeping the boat into the wind enough, you're going to start sailing forwards, perhaps when you're not ready for it. So that is why I would go for the sitting on the bows technique, as well as the fact that you're going to keep your ankles dry, which is nice, I think. All right. So on to the next pre-loaded question. And this one comes from Frank. And this is a very interesting question. Frank says, why? I'm just going to get something. He says, why on catamarans do the do the cleats uncleat downwards rather than upwards? So here's a cleat. So on the main sheet of the catamaran, is he talking main sheet? Jib sheets. Okay, so all right. So firstly, not all catamarans have jib cleats that uncleat downwards. Like the Hobie 16, the jib cleats generally on a modern boat will uncleat upwards. It's I think if you have a jib cleat which is on a block, so if you have, I could grab one. If you have a jib cleat which is on a block, then yes, it will uncleat upwards. And if you don't have, downwards. And if you have it which isn't on a block, it will generally uncleat upwards. I think this just comes down to the convenience of building the boat, because if you've got a cleat which mounts flat on a plate like this, much easier to have it like that rather than have it like that where you'll have to have some sort of spacer, or underneath where you're not going to have much space. But I think the whole thing is just about convenience. Like, why does the main sheet uncleat downwards? It's because it's much easier to uncleat downwards because you've got gravity helping you when you uncleat downwards as well, rather than trying to flick it out. And then if you're uncleating upwards, it will definitely cleat every time, which not everybody is looking for. That's what I think. All right. Oh, here we go. We've got Michael, Lake Michigan, Hobie 16, weather helm on starboard tack. All right. So starboard tack would mean it's likely to be your port rudder. So the rudder on the left side is where the problem is. Oh, before we complete this, sorry, I missed. Toot says, could everybody please give this a thumbs up? The like button. Good thinking, Toot. The more of you that hit the like button, this goes for all of the videos. It's the easiest way of supporting the channel for nothing. You don't even have to be logged in. Hit the like button, the thumbs up. That means that the video will be seen by more people, which means I'll be more enthusiastic about continuing to make more videos. So please do that. All right. So weather helm on the starboard tack, which we've just said means it's the port rudder that is going to be the problem. Okay, doesn't matter which sort of boat, same for every sort of boat. But what we're looking to do to reduce weather helm is to tuck the rudder in as close to the back of the boat, like this way, as possible. The usual reason for weather helm, if it's just on one tack, is because the rudder, which is on the leeward side when you're feeling that weather helm, is not getting tucked in to the back of the boat enough. So the wrong position, and let's exaggerate this a little bit, will be like this. So that is the wrong position. So on a boat like a Hobie 16, if you've got do check out the servicing your rudders video. But what you'll find, if the boat is I think from the 90s or newer, is on the top, if this is our tiller arm, and then, sorry, not a very good picture, on top of the tiller arm you should have a little bolt, and then on the inside you'll have a plate which locates in the cam. So I know on the older boats you don't have this, so we'll talk about this in a second. So that locates on the in the cam, which would kind of be like this, and then there's your lower casting there. So that plate, what that needs to be doing is going as far forwards as possible to locate in the cam. If you've put that as far forwards as possible, there shouldn't be, in fact, there's not any need to file out the slot where that bolt goes. Because if it's as far forwards in the slot as it will go, and the rudder's still coming back, then that means you've got a problem somewhere else. It might be that your cam is very old and worn, which means it needs replacing. It might be that your cam stop plate, have I got a rudder stock here? Oh, we won't have a cam stop plate in a rudder stock. But so if the cam, this is the cam, if you haven't seen a cam before, if this is old and worn, replace the cam. If the cam stop plate, which is the bit inside the tiller that this locates on, is really worn, then perhaps you haven't got enough metal there to actually push in. So you can turn them upside down, which sometimes helps. Other things that can be an issue is if the hole in the middle here or the hole in the middle of the rudder blade is really worn, then that's going to move and that's going to add to the weather helm as well. If the hole where the pin that holds the cam in is worn, then the cam is going to be able to move slightly backwards and forwards. So it all adds up, which could create that weather helm. So there we go. That's what I think. All right. We've got Ray on board. Hope that helps, Michael. Ray says, single-handed, often I walk it. All right, we're in an offshore wind again. I walk it out backwards, sails loose. I start turning to the side I want. At a certain point, the wind starts pushing the boat. I hop on, tighten the sails, and I'm off. This seems easier to me than onshore breeze, as there are usually fewer waves. Thanks for that, Ray. Thanks for sharing. We've got TM on board from Tennessee. Thanks for tuning in, TM. We've got Sylvie in Quebec. Thanks for coming. Which Hobie doesn't have a boom, and what difference does it make in sailing? All right. I don't know why I'm rubbing this out. I don't know if we're going to draw a boom or not, but there are several Hobies which don't have a boom. In North America compared to Europe, there's not quite the same range available. The number one Hobie which doesn't have a boom on this side of the Atlantic is the Hobie 15, which if you saw, I put out a beginner sailing video last week based on the Hobie 15. This would be the same for any type of catamaran without a boom. And the 15 is a great choice of boomless boat. On the other side of the Atlantic, the most prominent, I believe, is the Hobie Getaway. And then you've got the other roto-molded or plastic boats like the T1 and the T2 from Hobie. The Hobie Wave, of course, as well, doesn't have a boom. And what basically it means if you don't have a boom is you just can't carry as much power in the mainsail because you don't have the same level of control. Yeah, but so it's just how the boat's been designed. If you've got a boom, it means that the sail can be a bit more powerful. Like if here's our boat, there's our back beam. If we don't have a boom, it means that the sail has to have the back bottom corner further forwards, there's the mast, than the back beam, because when we sheet in, we have to be pulling kind of this way. There's the main sheet. Whereas if we have got a boom, so then the sail can be like on a 16, much bigger, because then we've got the boom supporting all of this sail, which is further back. And also the main sheet can attach back here, which gives us more leverage. And that is the point of the boom, to get more leverage on the sail. It also gives us more control. It means we can flatten the bottom of the sail if we want to, using the clew out haul, which is the line which attaches here. It will go around the back of the boom, and then which means you can pull this part of the sail outwards, which flattens the bottom, and it helps to reduce the power there. So there we go. All right. So TM says, hope that helps, by the way, Sylvie. Thanks very much for the question. I'm 58 now, used to sail a Hobie 14 and mostly Hobie 16 growing up, and thinking about getting back into it. And Ryan from Maui says, immediately do it. And I think we all agree, do it. As long as you've got the time and opportunity to use a boat, then it's definitely worth doing, because there is nothing better for the mind than a boat while you're actually sailing it. Very good. All right. So TM continues. Do you think a 16 would be better, or is the Getaway a better option? No, I'd go for the 16. Again, like I said earlier on, because there's so many of them about, you'll be able to find one more likely in your area at a good price. And if you sailed a 16 before, nothing against the Getaway, but the Getaway won't get up and go quite as early as the 16. 16's more powerful. And again, all it means is you need to, just when you're getting back into it, start off with a bit less wind. All right, we've got David on board who says, single-handed in strong winds and chop, I often have trouble coming about tacking. The chop knocks the bow off and I may not get it over on the first try. Any tips? Yeah, so if the chop is so much that it's stopping the boat from turning into the wind, you might have to just use a little bit of timing. So as we're sailing along upwind, we of course need to do all of our pre-tack jobs before we go into the tack, which are pre-tack. We need to check the area. We need to sail as high as possible to the wind so that we don't need to be going fast. We need to be sailing high, much more important than sailing fast. So, but not so high that the boat is almost stopping because we're so close to the wind. But with the jib pulled in tight, we definitely want to have the outside telltale flying straight back, and the inside one could be, don't know how to draw this, lifting a bit, which really tells us that we're sailing as high to the wind as possible. So what would we say? Sail high. Okay, next thing we need to do once we've checked the area. So the area we're going to check is, we're going to turn like that. So we need to make sure there's nothing that we're going to go into. Sail high and then main sheet in. And then once we've done those things, then we can start looking at the timing with the chop. And what we want to do is not start the turn just as there's a bit of chop about to hit the bow or a wave. What we want to do is get the bow over the bit of chop and then start the turn. That's going to mean that the boat doesn't have that resistance as we turn through the wind. That is what is going to help. And then as soon as we've initiated the turn, the next bit of chop that comes across is actually going to push us a bit more, which is nice. So there we go. Yeah, I would say those are the key points to look at when tacking in chop. All right, we're actually at 40 minutes already. This has gone very quickly. Thanks very much for all of your questions so far and for tuning in. At this point in the game, we're just going to take a short commercial break. If you'd like to support Joyrider TV, I've got a new initiative that's going on. It's called Channel Memberships. It's another way of supporting Joyrider TV. But for those of you who don't want to sign up to another website and don't like the look of Patreon, you can now support Joyrider TV through channel memberships on YouTube. And it works very much in the same way as Patreon, but you can do it without having to leave YouTube to do it. At the bottom of every video, there's a button that says something like join, and just click on that, and then it will tell you what to do. Thanks very much. All right, continuing. Where are we? We've got Not House Gang on board. Greetings from rainy Austria to all. It says 10 boat trips with the new Doog till now. Great stuff. Glad you're getting out. All right. Samuel says, any advice on heaving to with the mainsail only? Had this more or less locked down with monohulls, but since moving to cats, had no luck. Makes for events for race starts. Yeah. Okay. So heaving to, which you could also call parking or stopping the boat, is a necessary skill, especially before the start of a race. Do check out the video I made on heaving to. It was at some point last year. But the main thing that's going to help you heaving to is make sure that your mainsail is well out. So if you haven't got a jib, so what we would do if we were going to fully heave to or stop the boat with a jib is we would actually pull the jib on the wrong side. We'd then put the rudders across. So the jib is trying to pull the bow that way. The rudders are trying to put the bow that way. End result, we don't go forwards very much. If you don't have a jib, then we can get a similar effect by having the traveller out a lot. And then you can really experiment with the amount of tension that you have in the main sheet and how loose you need the main sheet to be, so that when you push, so slow the boat down gradually. Don't try to just whack the rudders away and think you're going to stop. If you are on a boat which doesn't have a mainsail, there's a chance, but it's going to be the sort of boat that tacks rather well, like an A-class or an FX1. So just bring her up slowly. And if the boat is coming up into the wind too much, then you've probably got too much main sheet on. So if you don't have any tension in the leech at all, so very little main sheet on, then you're not going to be having that drive to take you up into the wind when you push the rudders away. And with the wind blowing down onto the boat like this, you're still going to have, not obviously very much, not as much, but the wind is going to be blowing onto the bow of the boat, which is going to stop it from coming up into the wind. Also, with the traveller out, if you think of your boat like a weather vane, the angle that the traveller is in, where your mainsail is, that's the angle that your boat is going to sit at if you're not moving forwards. So by having the traveller out, the boat is going to sit nicely like that. It's going to be easier to stop, easier to get going. There we go. Hope that helps. Okay, Laurent says, without a boom, Hobie 16 with an easy sail. Nice choice. And I think the Hobie 16 with an easy sail actually brings us on to a good preloaded question that is related. And this one is from Arno in Canada, who said he's just got a Hobie 16 from a recent deal. We won't ask. And he says he's thinking of fixing it up for his daughters, who are 11 and 9, and asks, other than reefing the mainsail, what are the other options to make the boat more practical for children to sail? This is a very good question. This can also make it more practical to use if you're a less experienced sailor. But the Hobie 16 Easy Sail is a really good choice. Let's just see if we can illustrate this. So if we draw our standard sail, there's the boom. We talked about that earlier. There's the mast, and then the sail comes down like this. And as we know, the mainsail on a Hobie 16, the standard main, is a powerful beast, which is why if you're a less experienced sailor sailing a Hobie 16, you need to start off with lighter wind. But what if you don't have the choice to sail in lighter wind? Let's get smaller sail. Now, what you can do, which would be probably the least expensive option, is to see if you can find a Hobie 14 mainsail. So the Hobie 14 mainsail would kind of be like this, so much smaller. It's obviously going to deliver much less power. You may say, but why can't we just reef the mainsail? So reefing is what we call it when we reduce the size of the sail. You can reef the sail on the Hobie 16, which means we're losing about a quarter. So the reefing we'd lose about this much of the sail, which again is going to make it a lot less powerful. That's another option. The Hobie 14 mainsail, very good option. And another good option would be to see if you can get, they are pretty rare, but if you can get a Hobie 16 Easy or a Hobie 16 Easy Junior sail. So the Easy sail on the Hobie 16, what color can I use? Red. The Easy sail is kind of like, probably like this sort of shape. So it goes all the way to the top of the mast, but as you can see, we're losing a lot of sail area there. So that is a good option. But the least powerful of all is the Easy Junior sail, which really is a very small sail, which would make the boat very easy to use for anyone. Now, it is unlikely you'll be able to find an Easy Junior sail, but what you could do is look at smaller catamarans like the 14 or smaller and just take some measurements. And if it hasn't got a boom, like we said, as long as the clew of the sail is further forwards than the back beam, then we should be good to go. There we are. What else? You could get a sailmaker to make you one. But the other thing we can do to reduce the amount of power on the boat, and this is going to make a big difference, is put on a smaller jib. Now, you should have a world of possibilities finding a smaller jib. A lot of monohulls we could use a jib from. So like on the Hobie 15s that we have here, if the jib is damaged and we don't have a spare, then it's quite often that we just take like a jib off some sort of monohull, put it on the boat, and it generally works pretty well. So there we go. Smaller jib, smaller mainsail, very good. All right. So Not House Gang says, I hope that helps, by the way. New Doog is a border terrier on board. Oh, right. He's got a dog that he takes out sailing. Okay, I get it. He likes it as well as Goldwing riding, still heaving 2,000 kilometers on dog days. Great stuff. All right. If we could, at this stage in the game, not have any more questions in the live chat. Been going for 50 minutes now. and we've still got a lot in the live chat that you've already asked, and we've still got some preloaded questions to get through. So if you could just stop with any more questions now, please, that would be great. All right, so what are we looking at next? All right, Toot says the Getaway, he says, I have one, is user-friendly and better than a 16. So there we go. Everybody is, you know, everybody can make their own choices. And I've never actually sailed a Getaway, so I can't really talk with much authority on what the Getaway is like to sail. And I'm sure it sails really nicely. But the reason I'm saying the 16 is a good choice a lot of the time is because there's so many of them about. All right, we've got Mr. Tony KP tuning in from Ebeltoft, Denmark. Great to have you with us. All right, we've got Chris in Texas. Says, what did I miss? Quite a bit, actually. But what I'll do after the video's finished is I will index the video with all the different points that we've talked about in today's session. Toot says he has a Hobie 16 for sale. Toot, who I believe is in Texas. So if you're looking for a Hobie 16, ask Toot and he can sell you one. All right, Keith's on board. This is it's a new question. How did you come up with the Joyrider TV name? I like it. Minnesota here, getting close to the end of the sailing season. Yeah, where Joyrider came from is on the Wildwind Beach since the beginning of time. We have been, when it's been windy, taking people out on what we call joyrides, where we take people out for a burning lap of the bay. They go out on the trapeze. We go very fast and we get back to the beach feeling like they've just done something very exciting, because they have. Now that's called a joyride. Then the people that are working on the beach and taking people out on the joyrides they became known as joyriders. And I started first doing a few bits of clothing, like t-shirts and things with Joyrider written on it for the guys taking the joyrides to wear. And then it became inevitable that when I started making the videos, it was going to be Joyrider TV. There we go. Thanks for your question. All right. Where are we? All right. Ryan says internet issues. Wanted to say thanks to Joe for making the t-shirts and hoodies with my boat on them. They are fantastic and we love them. Yeah, if you didn't know, another way of supporting Joyrider TV is to head over to totaljoyrider.com, where the clothing empire is moving along at a very slow pace, but there's a lot of designs there which hopefully would suit every taste for whatever type of boat you're sailing. And these are getting delivered, printed and delivered from every continent on the planet. So wherever you are, apart from the Antarctic. So wherever you are, it's not going to take so long for them to get to you, usually about a week and a half. So head over to totaljoyrider.com. Great way of supporting the channel. Thanks, Ryan. All right, Toot says, learning from the guru. Nice, elevator music. Very good. All right, got David on board, who says, with a little in my hands, holding the main sheet for hours in high wind can be painful. I'm using the original 5-to-1 block of the 1980s. Would upgrading the block make it easier? Yes. So the standard block these days is a 6-to-1, but you can even go beyond the 6-to-1 and add more purchase. And then it really makes it a lot easier to sheet in. Now, I find it as well, if I'm on a long leg, like yesterday when we did the long distance race, if my hand, especially if it's cold, not that it was yesterday, if I'm holding a rope like this for a decent period of time, it's almost like when I want to open my hand, I have to prise my fingers apart to open it again. So I think regardless of what purchase you've got on the main sheet, because you always want to be holding the main sheet while you're sailing, this is going to be an issue. But what the extra purchase is going to do on your main sheet, it's going to make it easier to pull it in, less load. So there we go. All right, we've got Jeff from gearreport.com. Nice to have you on board, Jeff. Busy times, I'm sure. Haven't heard from you for a bit. Jeff is, of course, our roving reporter stateside for Joyrider TV. Right, Sylvie says, thanks for your so easy to understand videos. You taught me everything I know. I just start sailing the Hobie 14 this summer. Thanks even more for sharing your passion. Trip to Greece someday. Yes, great idea. All right, Arno says, thanks for answering the question about the kid-friendly Hobie 16. Thanks, Arno. Thanks for the question. All right. Oh, this is a good tip, actually, from Ryan in response to David with the arthritis holding the main sheet. He says, I increased the diameter of my main sheet to help with the fatigue. New blocks were also helpful. Yeah, so yeah, having a thicker rope on your main sheet really will help. You can go as big as, I don't know what that is in imperial numbers, but 10 millimeters on the main sheet is very comfortable. But what you might find with a 10 millimeter rope is in light winds, it doesn't go out as freely. So you could even, here's really throwing it out there, have a thinner rope that you put in for lighter winds if you really want to go for it. And then if it's going to be trapezing conditions, put in your thicker rope. And if you're using a 5-to-1 or a 6-to-1, it is very easy to thread the main sheet. Should only take you a minute or two. Once you've done it a few times, watch the video on how to thread the main sheet and off you go. Great idea there, Ryan. Thank you very much. All right, Chris says, is anybody looking to race in Texas? The Redfish Reach Regatta and Catamaran Conundrum Regatta are coming up October the 1st and 2nd at the Texas City Dike. So if I was in Texas, I know where I'd be at the start of October. You should do too. All right. Jeff says, is anyone else losing Joe's audio? Chris says everybody's has cut out for a few minutes. And section 11 outdoors says audio issues during the main sheet question. Persistent audio breakup. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm going to crack on, hoping that the audio is enough to be cracking on with. Okay, where are we next? We've got a question from Dagoberto Ruben, who says, would like to know the tension. How does the tension in the shrouds affect the sail trim on the Getaway? Again, the Getaway is the boat in question here. Yeah, so I'm under the impression that with the rig tension on the Getaway, this would be similar to how we're doing the rig tension on yeah, what to be honest, I don't know. There's two ways of doing your rig tension. One is what I'd call on a tight rigged boat, which is a boat like an F-18, which has a sophisticated means of depowering, which has diamond wires and spreaders to pre-bend the mast. And these boats, we sail with the tighter rig that we have, the more it depowers the boat. But I would think with the Getaway, it's more like with a Hobie 16. So as you get more power, you can ease the rig tension off slightly. And what this does, if this is our boat, as we ease the rig tension off, which we would do from the forestay. This is the best place to loosen the rig tension. Sorry, these are our hulls. Is it allows the mast, this is an exaggeration, to lean over to leeward, which means we're really opening up the leach of the mainsail, which reduces the power greatly on the boat. Also, by loosening the rig tension, if this is a side view of the boat, it puts the mast much further back, which helps to lift the bows, which I know we all need help with. So there we go. I hope that helps. All right. It seems that the audio is fine in Rosenheim, Germany. So everyone else, yeah, reload the channel and that helps. All right. So we've got Damien in the preloaded questions who asks, sorry, is the harness for sailing the same as a harness for kiteboarding? Quick answer, no. Unfortunately not. Most kiteboarders that I know would be wearing a waist harness. And if you go sailing with a waist harness, you're likely to do yourself some damage to your back. Here we go. We can use this boat again. Because when you're sailing and you're using a harness, you'd be in this kind of position of your whole back, and the pull would be from about where your belt is, whereas a harness for kiteboarding, the hook is a bit higher up, but also it's only going around this section, which means all that pull from there is going to be in your lower back, and you could really hurt yourself sailing, trapezing with a waist harness for kite surfing or for windsurfing. So it is definitely worth having a proper sailing harness. But if you're using a seat harness for kite surfing, then yes, the hook will be in the same place as it is for sailing. But again, you won't have the same level of back support. There we go. All right. So continuing with the preloaded questions. This one's from Tom, who says, do you have any tips for trimming an F-18 for sailing in very heavy winds? Yes, in fact. All right. So there's a few things we can do on land, and then there's a few things that we'll do while we're sailing. So the things we can do on land, which are going to help, is, again, rig tension. We can alter the rig tension for wind strength to a certain degree. So on an F-18, we would, to be honest, we would probably alter rig tension more for crew weight, but let's call this RT, rig tension. For a lighter wind or for a light or a heavier crew, we can sail with slightly less rig tension, so about 26 for light winds. And then when the wind increases, we could put the rig tension up to about 28 or maybe even a bit more. So that's the rig tension. These numbers are the numbers that we get on the loose gauge. If you really want to get the most out of your F-18, a loose gauge is really going to help you, because that is how you can accurately measure the tensions in the cables on the boat. Other tension gauges are available, but they're generally not seen to be as good. All right. So rig tension is one. The next one is diamonds. These are the wires that support the mast. So if this is the mast, we have spreaders on the mast, which are like triangles. And then the diamond wires push on the spreaders like this, pushing this part of the mast forwards, which puts bend into the mast, which basically means the more we bend the mast before we go sailing like this, the more it's going to flatten the sail and make it more manageable in the strong winds. So the diamonds in light winds, sorry, I'll just write strong. The diamonds in light winds, we might have at about 35. And then in strong winds, you could possibly go up to as much as 40 on the diamonds. So we're pre-bending the mast more. So there we go. That's before we go sailing, things that we can do to make the F-18 more manageable upwind. And then when we're sailing, the first thing that we really want to do is crank that downhaul on really as hard as you can. And then once you've cranked it on as hard as you can, crank it on a bit more. That makes a massive difference. And then and then when you've got your downhaul cranked on that hard, look at your sail and it should be completely flat. If it's not completely flat, perhaps it's because you haven't sheeted in your mainsail enough with the main sheet. Sheeting in the main sheet is going to flatten the sail more. But of course, you are going to have to play the main sheet in the gusts. Then having done that, if you're still feeling too much juice, we can adjust the mast rotation. So here is our boat. If we've not got too much power once the downhaul's on full and we like where we are, then the general position for the mast is pointing in line with the shroud. That is our normal position for our mast rotation. Then if we want to lose more power on the upwind, flattening the sail more and opening the leech towards the top of the sail, we can pull the mast more in. So then that'll be in line with this corner where the back beam is. And then if we've done all that and we're still feeling too much juice, then what we can do also is lift, I don't need to draw this, is just lift a little bit of dagger board as well. Depending on which type of F-18, lifting about this amount of dagger board will allow the boat to slip sideways slightly, so it's not going to want to fly the hull as much, and you're going to go faster, which means you're going to end up with getting the same amount of lift and not losing that height. So there you go. There are a few things you can do to really help with your boat on the upwind. I didn't mention the jib. Really crank on the jib halyard tension and then crank the jib sheet as tight as you physically can to flatten the jib off as much as you can. That's going to help a lot as well. All right. So continuing with the live chat, we've got a question from Alfro, all from Canmore, who said, explain the boom vang, please. All right, I'm going to do this very quickly. No more questions in the live chat, please, if we can avoid it at this time. So we boom vang, also called kicking strap, we don't generally have on catamarans because on a catamaran, the main sheet does very much what the vang or the kicking strap does on a monohull. But on a monohull, generally speaking, what the kicking strap does is it controls the tension in the leech of the mainsail by pulling down here. So this would be our kicking strap here, multi-purchase, which by pulling down there, it pulls down this way, which pulls the boom down, which tightens the leech of the sail. There we go. That is what the boom vang does. There we go. All right. The older Hobie 16 does have a boom vang. Yeah, but you could take it off because it was decided that it wasn't actually effective, not needed. And because the sail is so big on a 16, the power that this boom vang would need to be effective would be so much that I would think you might actually damage your mast or your boom when you pull it on enough. So that's what I think anyway. Okay, TM says what you just said about depowering the rig with the forestay would induce a lot of weather helm. Okay, we're not talking. Okay, the drawings that I did were not to scale, so we're not going to put the mast so far back that we're getting weather helm. Yes, we might get slightly heavier steering, but it is going to reduce a lot of power in the rig. So I'm talking probably this much on the forestay that we're changing there. All right, so we've got another preloaded question. This one's from Christian, who says, what are the timings and the actions for the crew to take during attack? This is a good question because we haven't had it before, which is nice. So if this is the boat before the tack, there's two different scenarios when we're tacking. One is if it capsized, one is if it isn't. So what we want to do is if it's not windy and we're going to tack, then by having our weight slightly further back when we go into the tack, this is going to lift the bows slightly and allow the boat to turn much quicker. It's not going to have as much resistance if we're lifting the bows a bit. So going into the tack, move backwards a bit, and then as the boat goes through the wind, so this is definitely a light wind tack here, the jib will back, and then at that stage we can stay on the original windward side for a bit longer than we think, because this hull here isn't turning as far as this hull. So the longer we stay on the original windward side, it's going to help our tack more. And then once we're pretty much through, we can then take the journey from here to here. And then at that time also just loosen the jib off. And then when the boat starts moving forwards on the new side, that's the time to start sheeting in. All right. And then if it's windier, this is going to be slightly different, because when we're tacking and it's windy, we do risk the capsize backwards, which we're trying to avoid, of course. So going into the tack when it's windy, jib in tight, and staying quite far forwards. So we're not allowing the bows of the boat to come up, because if we allow the wind to get under this curved trampoline front beam, it could catch the trampoline, flip us over backwards. So get forwards, and then literally as soon as the wind comes in the other side of the jib, you need to be in this corner. Definitely, absolutely in this corner. And then when it's windy, as soon as the jib backs, that's the time to really loosen off the jib sheet. And then once pretty similar to the light wind, but loosen it off, that's going to put more curve into the sail, because with the jib tight, it's going to be more like this. With the jib loose, more like this. And then by having the jib loosened off a bit, that's going to help bring the bows round even quicker. And then again, as soon as you feel the boat start sailing forwards, very quickly let the jib off there, pull it in on the new side, and off you go. There we go. I hope that helps with some crew motions during the tack. All right. So Ryan in the live chat. I really like the Getaway. Plastic molded hulls, wings, lots of room on the tramp. We get the nut hugger harnesses. Nice. Yeah, all right. Thanks for that, Ryan. All right, Sylvie says, can wings be added to the Hobie 14? My knees hurt already and I'll get older. It's not particularly common to put wings on a Hobie 14. Yeah, the way to help your knees is you could try some knee pads, wetsuit with long legs, or if you can get hold of an old wetsuit, you could just cut the knees off that wetsuit and use them as knee pads. Very popular choice, and that really helps. There is one guy in Canada called, just trying to think, Vic, who is making wings for boats that don't have wings. Very interesting stuff. In fact, in the next episode of Show Us Your Cat, we're going to see what Vic has done, which you are not going to believe. All right, so Raf says, coming back to mast rotation, why would you not run the mast completely parallel to the hulls? Well, what I find is when the mast, let's just use this boat here, is completely in line, because the mast doesn't bend very easily in this motion, it bends very easily sideways. It makes it really difficult to sheet in. But also, what you're doing when you're bringing the mast in more is you're altering the flow over the back of the rig. So if this is our mast, this is the back part of the mast, and this is the sail. What we want is this to be really smooth, like this. But if we bring the mast in, then what we have is this kind of flow on the back of the sail. So that is why, as well as it making it harder to sheet in, this is why I wouldn't bring in the mast completely, because we're going to have a more turbulent airflow over the backside of the sail, which is going to slow us down. All right. Chris says in answer to that question as well, you can't get it completely parallel, but in case you would create more drag by almost inverting the shape of the leading edge of the sail. There we go. Something like what I just said. And Chris is also advertising Zyke hybrid pants, which are molded in the knees and the butt, which I believe is short for buttocks. There we go. So that is all we've got time for today in the live Q&A. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button before tuning out, and I'll be back next Friday with some more Q&A. Going to have something very exciting. It was so exciting, I've even put music on the video that's going to be going out tomorrow at the usual time. So check that one out because it is very exciting. Thanks very much. See you soon with some more.